Maya Rodriguez had always found solace in quiet places. At 28, she worked as a freelance graphic designer in Portland, Oregon, but her heart yearned for something deeper than corporate logos and marketing campaigns. When her friend Jessica mentioned a meditation retreat at the Mountain View Buddhist Temple, nestled in the Cascade foothills, Maya felt an immediate pull. She'd been practicing meditation for 3 years, mostly through apps and YouTube videos, but never in a formal setting. The temple sat on 15 acres of pristine woodland, its traditional architecture standing in stark contrast to the modern world Maya was escaping. She arrived on a crisp October morning, her backpack containing simple clothes, a journal, and an eager heart. The retreat was scheduled for 5 days, focusing on mindfulness and inner peace. Maya had saved for months to afford the fee, viewing it as an investment in her mental health. During the orientation, she met Brother Thomas, a Western monk who'd converted 15 years earlier. His serene demeanor and gentle speech immediately put Maya at ease. He explained the temple's routine: morning meditation at 5, breakfast at 7, Dharma talks at 9, walking meditation at 11, lunch at noon, afternoon meditation at 2, dinner at 5, and evening reflection at 7. The schedule felt structured yet peaceful. Maya also encountered Sister Margaret, the temple's administrator, whose stern expression seemed permanently etched on her weathered face. Unlike Brother Thomas, Sister Margaret's presence felt cold and unwelcoming. During the introduction, she scrutinized each participant with calculating eyes, lingering longest on Maya. The uncomfortable attention made Maya shift nervously, wondering if she'd somehow violated an unspoken rule. The first day proceeded smoothly. Maya embraced the silence, finding her meditation practice deepening in the temple's sacred atmosphere. The other participants, 12 in total, seemed equally committed to the experience. During meals, eaten in contemplative quiet, Maya felt a growing sense of belonging she'd never experienced elsewhere. However, she began noticing Sister Margaret's continued watchfulness. During meditation sessions, Maya would occasionally open her eyes to find the administrator staring at her with an expression of barely concealed disapproval. When Maya approached the donation box after lunch, Sister Margaret appeared beside her, commenting sharply about proper intentions and true commitment to the path. Brother Thomas, meanwhile, seemed to radiate genuine compassion. During walking meditation, he moved with fluid grace, his presence calming everyone around him. Maya noticed him observing Sister Margaret's behavior toward her, his brows furrowing slightly whenever the administrator's voice grew harsh. That evening, during reflection time, Sister Margaret announced new rules specifically about appropriate temple conduct. Her eyes remained fixed on Maya throughout the announcement, making the targeted nature of her words painfully obvious. Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and confusion, unable to understand what she'd done wrong. As the day ended, Maya lay on her narrow cot in the dormitory, questioning whether she belonged there. The peace she'd sought seemed overshadowed by Sister Margaret's inexplicable hostility. Yet something about Brother Thomas's gentle presence gave her hope that tomorrow might bring clarity and understanding. The second day began before dawn with the deep resonance of the temple bell. Maya rose quietly, grateful for the meditation practice that helped center her despite yesterday's uncomfortable encounters. She dressed in simple gray clothes, the suggested attire for retreat participants, and made her way to the meditation hall through corridors lit by soft lanterns. In the pre-dawn darkness, the hall felt especially sacred. 20 cushions arranged in neat rows faced a golden Buddha statue, its serene expression offering comfort to Maya's troubled mind. She chose a cushion near the back, hopping to avoid Sister Margaret's scrutinizing gaze. Brother Thomas entered silently, bowing respectfully to the Buddha before taking his position at the front. As other participants filed in, Maya noticed Sister Margaret's absence and felt relief wash over her. The meditation session proceeded beautifully, Brother Thomas's gentle guidance helping everyone sink into deeper states of awareness. For 45 minutes, Maya experienced the profound peace she'd come seeking, her breathing synchronizing with the collective rhythm of the group. Breakfast followed in the dining hall, a simple meal of oatmeal, fresh fruit, and herbal tea consumed in mindful silence. Maya appreciated the opportunity to eat without conversation, focusing entirely on taste, texture, and gratitude. She began to understand why monastics embraced such practices. The absence of casual chatter allowed space for deeper contemplation. During the morning Dharma talk, Brother Thomas spoke about compassion and understanding. His words resonated deeply with Maya, especially his emphasis on responding to difficulty with patience rather than reactivity. She wondered if his teaching was somehow connected to yesterday's tensions, though his gentle manner never suggested anything directly. True spiritual practice, Brother Thomas explained, often involves facing our own judgments and preconceptions. Sometimes we encounter resistance from others, and sometimes we create resistance within ourselves. The path forward always involves looking inward with honesty and extending outward with kindness. Maya scribbled notes frantically, finding profound wisdom in his simple words. Around her, other participants nodded and smiled, equally moved by his teaching. The morning session concluded with a brief question period, during which Brother Thomas answered inquiries with patience and insight. Walking meditation followed, taking the group through forest paths surrounding the temple. Maya loved these outdoor sessions, feeling connected to nature in ways her urban life rarely permitted. The crunch of autumn leaves underfoot, the crisp mountain air, and the companionable silence created a perfect environment for mindful movement. However, her peace shattered when Sister Margaret appeared on the path ahead, blocking the group's progress. Her stern expression had hardened overnight, and she carried herself with authoritative rigidity that seemed entirely opposed to the temple's peaceful atmosphere. Some participants, Sister Margaret announced loudly, her eyes fixed directly on Maya, seem to believe this retreat is a casual vacation rather than serious spiritual practice. I've observed behavior that shows disrespect for our sacred traditions and lack of genuine commitment to Buddhist principles. Maya's heart pounded as every head turned toward her. The other participants looked confused, clearly uncertain about what behavior Sister Margaret referenced. Maya felt equally bewildered, unable to identify any actions that could warrant such public criticism. Brother Thomas stepped forward gently, his expression maintaining perfect equanimity despite the obvious tension. Sister Margaret, perhaps we could discuss any concerns privately after. No, Sister Margaret interrupted sharply. This affects everyone. Some people attend retreats merely for Instagram content and spiritual bragging rights. They lack proper reverence and understanding of what we offer here. The accusation hit Maya like a physical blow. She deliberately left her phone in her car throughout the retreat, specifically to avoid any distractions from social media or outside communications. Her commitment to the experience was genuine and deeply personal, making Sister Margaret's public humiliation feel especially cruel and unfounded. "I don't understand," Maya said quietly, her voice barely audible above the forest sounds. "I haven't used my phone or taken any photos. I'm here because I genuinely want to deepen my practice." Sister Margaret's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "I've seen your type before. Young people who think meditation is trendy, who treat sacred spaces like entertainment venues. Your attitude during meals, your casual approach to sitting meditation, your inappropriate questions during Dharma talks, everything indicates someone who doesn't belong in serious spiritual community." Maya felt tears welling in her eyes, both from confusion and humiliation. She'd asked one question during yesterday's Dharma talk about applying mindfulness to creative work, a sincere inquiry about integrating practice into daily life. Her casual approach to meditation consisted of arriving early and staying focused throughout sessions. Her behavior during meals involved exactly what Brother Thomas had instructed: mindful eating in respectful silence. The other participants shifted uncomfortably, clearly uncertain how to respond to the confrontation. Maya noticed sympathetic glances from several people, suggesting they found Sister Margaret's behavior as inappropriate as she did. However, nobody spoke up, perhaps intimidated by the administrator's authority or uncertain about temple protocols. Brother Thomas maintained his calm demeanor, though Maya detected subtle tension in his posture. Sister Margaret, I believe there may be some misunderstanding here. Maya has shown nothing but respect and genuine engagement throughout her time with us. Perhaps we could. You're too trusting, Brother Thomas, Sister Margaret interrupted again, her voice rising. I've managed this temple for 8 years. I know dedication when I see it, and I know spiritual tourism when I see it. This young woman is wasting everyone's time and energy. Maya felt anger rising alongside her hurt and confusion. The injustice of the situation was overwhelming. Being publicly attacked for offenses she hadn't committed, having her sincere spiritual seeking dismissed as superficial tourism, and watching a peaceful retreat transformed into a humiliating spectacle. What exactly have I done wrong? Maya asked, her voice stronger now despite her emotional turmoil. Please give me specific examples so I can understand and correct my behavior. Sister Margaret's expression grew even more severe. The fact that you're arguing instead of accepting correction shows everything I need to know about your character. Truly committed practitioners accept guidance humbly. Your defensiveness proves my point about your inappropriate attitude. The circular logic was maddening. Maya realized that any response she gave would be twisted into further evidence of her supposed unworthiness. She looked at Brother Thomas desperately, hoping he might intervene more forcefully, but his position as a monk seemed to constrain him from directly confronting Sister Margaret's authority. Perhaps, Brother Thomas suggested diplomatically, we could continue our walking meditation and address any concerns during this afternoon's individual meetings with participants. Sister Margaret shook her head firmly. No, this needs to be resolved now, before her negative energy affects the entire group further. Maya felt trapped and helpless, surrounded by strangers in an unfamiliar environment, being attacked by someone whose authority seemed absolute within the temple structure. The spiritual sanctuary she'd sought had become a nightmare of public humiliation and incomprehensible accusations. The forest around them remained beautiful and serene, birds continuing their songs and leaves rustling gently in the breeze, seemingly oblivious to the human drama unfolding on the path. Maya wished she could disappear into the peaceful woodland, away from Sister Margaret's harsh judgment and the uncomfortable attention of fellow participants. The confrontation on the forest path had left Maya feeling emotionally raw and spiritually bruised. As the group returned to the temple for lunch, she walked at the back, hopping to remain invisible while processing the morning's traumatic events. The other participants maintained the retreat's customary silence, but Maya sensed their discomfort and confusion about what they'd witnessed. Lunch was served in the same peaceful dining hall where Maya had felt such contentment yesterday. but now the space felt tainted by tension. She sat alone at a corner table, picking at her simple meal of vegetable soup and bread, while Sister Margaret held court near the kitchen, speaking in hushed but animated tones with two long-time temple volunteers who'd arrived that morning. Brother Thomas moved through the dining room with his usual gentle presence, refilling water pitchers and clearing dishes with mindful attention. When he approached Maya's table, he paused slightly, offering a subtle nod of reassurance that provided small comfort in her distress. His kindness stood in stark contrast to Sister Margaret's harsh treatment. After lunch, participants were given free time for personal reflection before the afternoon meditation session. Maya retreated to a quiet garden area behind the temple, seeking solace among the carefully tended flowers and stone pathways. She sat on a wooden bench beside a small pond, watching koi fish swim lazily while trying to make sense of her situation. "Excuse me," a voice said softly behind her. Maya turned to see Jennifer, one of the other retreat participants, approaching hesitantly. Jennifer was a middle-aged nurse from Seattle who'd been practicing Buddhism for several years. Her kind eyes held sympathy and concern. "I wanted you to know," Jennifer said quietly, sitting beside Maya on the bench, "that what happened this morning was completely inappropriate. I've attended several retreats here over the past 3 years, and I've never seen Sister Margaret behave so harshly toward anyone. Her accusations made no sense based on what I've observed of your conduct." Maya felt immense relief at finally receiving validation from someone who'd witnessed the confrontation. "I keep replaying everything, trying to understand what I did wrong, but I can't figure it out. I've been trying so hard to be respectful and follow all the guidelines." Jennifer nodded sympathetically. "Your behavior has been exemplary. You arrive early for sessions, participate fully, eat mindfully, and ask thoughtful questions. If anything, you've shown more dedication than many people who attend these retreats." Sister Margaret's behavior was puzzling and frankly unprofessional. "Has she done this to other people?" Maya asked, wondering if she'd somehow stumbled into a pattern of abuse. "Not that I've witnessed directly," Jennifer replied carefully, "but I've heard whispers from other long-time participants about her becoming increasingly territorial about the temple. Some people think she sees herself as a gatekeeper who decides who's worthy of Buddhist practice. It's completely contrary to the tradition's emphasis on compassion and inclusion." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of David, another participant who'd observed the morning's events. David was a retired teacher from Portland who'd been practicing meditation for over a decade. His weathered face showed both wisdom and current concern. "I hope you don't mind me joining your conversation," David said, settling carefully onto the grass near their bench. "I felt compelled to say something about this morning. In 30 years of attending various spiritual retreats, I've never seen anything like Sister Margaret's behavior toward you. It was completely inappropriate and contrary to everything Buddhist teaching represents. Maya felt tears welling again, this time from gratitude rather than humiliation. Having experienced practitioners validate her feelings provided enormous relief after hours of self-doubt and confusion. The thing is, David continued, Brother Thomas looked deeply troubled by what happened. I could see him struggling with how to respond. He's genuinely committed to compassion and right speech, which probably makes it difficult for him to directly confront Sister Margaret's authority, especially in public. But someone needs to address this, Jennifer added firmly. What if she targets another participant? Or what if her behavior escalates further? This creates exactly the kind of negative environment that drives people away from spiritual practice. The afternoon meditation session approached with Maya feeling torn between her desire to continue the retreat and her dread of further confrontation with Sister Margaret. Jennifer and David's support had helped her regain some emotional equilibrium, but the administrator's unpredictable hostility cast a shadow over every activity. Maya entered the meditation hall early, hopping to settle into her practice before Sister Margaret appeared. She chose the same cushion she'd used that morning, closing her eyes and focusing on her breath while other participants gradually filled the space. The familiar ritual of preparation, adjusting her posture, setting her intention, releasing the day's tensions, it provided comfort despite the underlying stress. Brother Thomas entered with his customary quiet dignity, bowing to the Buddha statue before taking his position. Maya opened her eyes briefly to see him scanning the room, his gaze lingering momentarily on her with what seemed like gentle concern. His presence radiated the same peaceful energy that had initially drawn her to deepen her practice. Today we'll explore the concept of equanimity, Brother Thomas began, his voice carrying the measured cadence that made his teaching so compelling. Equanimity isn't indifference or emotional numbness. Rather, it's the capacity to remain centered and compassionate regardless of external circumstances, whether pleasant or unpleasant. Maya felt as though he was speaking directly to her situation, offering guidance for navigating the challenges she'd encountered. She listened intently as he continued. When we face criticism or conflict, our natural tendency is to react defensively or to absorb others' negative emotions as our own truth. Equanimity teaches us to observe these interactions without losing our inner stability. We can acknowledge others' perspectives without accepting their judgments as definitive statements about our worth or character. The teaching felt like a lifeline, offering practical wisdom for dealing with Sister Margaret's harsh treatment. Maya began to understand that the administrator's behavior reflected Sister Margaret's own internal state, rather than any objective assessment of Maya's character or commitment. As the meditation session deepened, Maya found herself able to release some of the morning's emotional turbulence. She focused on Brother Thomas's guidance about breathing through difficulty, using mindfulness to observe her reactions without being overwhelmed by them. For the first time since the forest confrontation, she felt genuinely peaceful. However, her serenity was shattered when the meditation hall door opened loudly, followed by Sister Margaret's deliberate footsteps across the wooden floor. Maya kept her eyes closed, hopping to maintain her meditative state, but she could feel the administrator's presence approaching her section of the room. "Some people," Sister Margaret announced in a voice loud enough to disrupt everyone's concentration, "use meditation sessions as opportunities to daydream rather than engage in serious spiritual work. This casual approach to practice shows disrespect for the Buddha's teachings and wastes everyone's time." Maya's eyes flew open in shock and dismay. Around the room, other participants stirred uncomfortably, their own meditation practices disrupted by the unexpected interruption. Brother Thomas maintained his seated position but opened his eyes, his expression showing carefully controlled concern. "Sister Margaret," Brother Thomas said gently, "perhaps we could allow everyone to complete their meditation practice before." "No," Sister Margaret interrupted, her voice rising. "This needs to be addressed immediately. I've been observing this participant's behavior throughout the retreat, and it's becoming increasingly clear that she lacks the discipline and respect necessary for serious Buddhist study." Maya felt her face burning with embarrassment and anger. The accusation was not only false but cruel. She'd been deeply engaged in meditation, following Brother Thomas's guidance exactly as instructed. The public humiliation felt especially painful in the sacred space where she'd found such peace just moments before. "What specific behavior are you referring to?" Brother Thomas asked, his voice maintaining its gentle tone despite an underlying firmness that hadn't been present earlier. Sister Margaret gestured dramatically toward Maya. "Her posture is too casual, her breathing is inconsistent, and I can see her mind wandering constantly. She's treating this meditation hall like a relaxation spa rather than a place of serious spiritual discipline." The accusations were absurd and impossible to verify, making them particularly insidious. How could anyone objectively measure the consistency of someone else's breathing or the wandering of their mind during meditation? Maya realized that Sister Margaret was using the subjective nature of contemplative practice to justify her harassment. Maya stood up slowly from her meditation cushion, her legs shaking slightly from both the prolonged sitting and the emotional stress of being publicly attacked again. The meditation hall fell completely silent, except for the soft sound of her movement and the distant chirping of birds outside the windows. "I'd like to understand what I can do to meet your expectations," Maya said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "You've criticized my meditation posture, my breathing, and my mental focus, but I'm not sure how to address concerns about internal experiences that only I can observe." Sister Margaret's expression hardened further. "The fact that you're questioning my assessment instead of accepting it shows exactly the arrogant attitude I've been trying to address. Truly committed students receive feedback with gratitude and humility, not argumentative defensiveness." Maya felt trapped in the same impossible logic she'd encountered on the forest path. Any response she offered would be twisted into further evidence of her supposed spiritual inadequacy. The other participants watched in uncomfortable silence, clearly distressed by the confrontation but unsure how to intervene. Brother Thomas rose from his own cushion with fluid grace, his movement commanding attention without aggression. "Sister Margaret, I've been observing all participants throughout our sessions, and I've noticed nothing inappropriate about Maya's meditation practice. Her posture has been correct, her attention focused, and her participation respectful. Perhaps there's been some misunderstanding." "You're too lenient, Brother Thomas," Sister Margaret replied sharply. "Your compassionate nature prevents you from seeing when people are taking advantage of this temple's generosity. I have experience identifying students who aren't serious about the Dharma." Maya watched Brother Thomas's face carefully, noticing subtle changes in his expression that suggested growing concern about Sister Margaret's behavior. His natural inclination toward harmony and peaceful resolution seemed to be warring with recognition that the situation required more direct intervention. "Maya," Brother Thomas said gently, turning toward her with kind eyes, "please don't let this interaction disturb your practice. You've shown nothing but sincerity and dedication since arriving here. Sometimes we encounter challenges that test our equanimity, and this appears to be one of those moments for all of us." His words provided comfort, but Maya could see that his diplomatic approach wasn't deterring Sister Margaret's increasingly aggressive behavior. If anything, the administrator seemed emboldened by what she perceived as insufficient support for her position. "Brother Thomas, your defense of this individual is enabling behavior that undermines everything we're trying to accomplish here," Sister Margaret declared. "If you continue to coddle people who don't respect our traditions, this temple will lose its reputation as a serious center for Buddhist practice." Maya felt a surge of anger on Brother Thomas's behalf. His gentle wisdom and genuine compassion had been the highlight of her retreat experience, and watching Sister Margaret attack him felt even more infuriating than being targeted herself. "Sister Margaret," Maya said, her voice gaining strength, "Brother Thomas has been nothing but helpful and inspiring. His teaching this afternoon about equanimity was exactly what I needed to hear, and his guidance has deepened my meditation practice significantly. If you have concerns about my behavior, please address them with me directly instead of criticizing someone who's been genuinely supportive." The meditation hall grew even quieter as Maya's words hung in the air. She realized she'd crossed some invisible line by defending Brother Thomas against Sister Margaret's criticism. But she felt no regret about standing up for someone who'd shown her kindness and wisdom. Sister Margaret's face flushed with anger. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Instead of accepting correction humbly, you're now lecturing me about proper behavior and defending Brother Thomas as if he needs protection from temple administration. Your arrogance is astounding." Maya felt tears threatening again, not from hurt this time, but from frustration at the impossibility of reasoning with someone determined to misinterpret every word and action. She looked around the meditation hall, seeing sympathy in other participants' faces, but no indication that anyone planned to speak up on her behalf. Brother Thomas stepped closer to both women, his presence radiating calm authority despite the escalating tension. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately, allowing other participants to complete their meditation session." "No," Sister Margaret said firmly. "This affects everyone here. They need to understand the standards we maintain and the consequences of disrespectful behavior." Maya felt the weight of 15 pairs of eyes watching the confrontation unfold in the sacred meditation hall. The afternoon light streaming through tall windows created patterns on the wooden floor, but the natural beauty of the space felt overshadowed by the human drama playing out among the meditation cushions. Sister Margaret moved closer to Maya, her proximity feeling threatening despite the peaceful setting. "Young lady, your behavior throughout this retreat has been consistently inappropriate. You've shown disrespect for our traditions, questioned legitimate feedback, and now you're attempting to manipulate Brother Thomas into supporting your position. This is exactly the kind of spiritual materialism that corrupts authentic practice." Maya's hands clenched involuntarily at her sides. The accusation of spiritual materialism, using Buddhist concepts for ego gratification rather than genuine growth, felt particularly cruel because it attacked the sincere motivations that had brought her to the retreat in the first place. "I came here seeking genuine spiritual growth," Maya replied, her voice carrying new conviction despite her emotional distress. "I've followed every guideline, participated fully in all activities, and tried to approach the teachings with an open heart. I'm still not clear on what specific actions you want me to change." Your attitude is what needs to change, Sister Margaret shot back. The fact that you keep asking for specific examples shows that you're treating spiritual practice like a checklist instead of engaging in real inner transformation. You're intellectualizing everything instead of surrendering to the process. Brother Thomas cleared his throat gently, drawing attention back to his calm presence. In my experience, students who ask thoughtful questions and seek clarity about expectations are often the most serious about their practice. Maya's questions suggest genuine engagement rather than superficial participation. Sister Margaret whirled toward Brother Thomas, her frustration now directed at him. Your Western approach to Buddhism is too accommodating. In traditional monasteries, students accept guidance without constant questioning. This woman needs to learn respect for authority and proper hierarchical relationships. Maya watched Brother Thomas's reaction carefully, noticing a slight tightening around his eyes that suggested growing concern about Sister Margaret's increasingly authoritarian stance. His commitment to compassionate communication seemed to be reaching its limits in the face of her aggressive behavior. Buddhism has always emphasized the middle way, Brother Thomas replied thoughtfully. Neither blind obedience nor rebellious rejection serves the path of awakening. Healthy questioning and respectful dialogue have been part of Buddhist tradition since the Buddha's own time. Don't lecture me about Buddhist tradition, Sister Margaret snapped. I've been studying these teachings longer than both of you combined. I know spiritual bypassing when I see it, and I know when someone is using retreat attendance to avoid real inner work. Maya felt her anger rising to match Sister Margaret's hostility. The constant attacks on her character and motivations were becoming unbearable, especially when delivered in front of people whose respect she valued. She realized that remaining silent and accepting the abuse wasn't serving anyone, not herself, not the other participants who were being forced to witness the inappropriate behavior, and not the temple's stated mission of promoting compassion and understanding. Sister Margaret, Maya said, her voice carrying new authority, you've accused me of disrespect, spiritual materialism, arrogance, and avoiding inner work, but you haven't provided a single specific example of problematic behavior. You've criticized my meditation posture, breathing, and mental focus, but these are internal experiences that you can't actually observe from outside. The meditation hall grew even quieter as Maya continued speaking, her words carrying the clarity that comes from finally standing up to a bully. You've interrupted meditation sessions, disrupted walking meditation, and created exactly the kind of negative environment that drives people away from spiritual practice. You've attacked Brother Thomas for showing basic human kindness and accused me of manipulation for defending someone who's been genuinely helpful. If anyone is creating problems in this retreat, it's not me. Sister Margaret's face turned red with rage. "How dare you speak to me that way? I am the administrator of this temple, and I have the authority to remove participants who don't meet our standards. Your behavior right now proves everything I've been saying about your inappropriate attitude." Maya felt a strange calm descending over her, the kind of clarity that emerges when someone finally stops trying to please an unreasonable person and starts speaking truth instead. The silence in the meditation hall stretched taut as Sister Margaret's threat hung in the air. Maya realized she'd reached a turning point where backing down would only invite further abuse, while standing her ground might result in being expelled from the retreat she'd spent months planning and saving to attend. Brother Thomas moved between the two women, his presence creating a buffer zone that somehow managed to lower the tension without eliminating it entirely. His expression showed deep concern mixed with what Maya was beginning to recognize as carefully controlled anger at Sister Margaret's behavior. "Sister Margaret," Brother Thomas said, his voice maintaining its characteristic gentleness while carrying an undertone of unmistakable authority. "I think we need to step back from this confrontation and approach the situation with more skillful means. The Buddha taught that angry words create karma that affects everyone present, not just the speakers." Maya noticed several participants nodding subtly at Brother Thomas's words, their faces showing relief that someone was finally addressing the inappropriate nature of the conflict. Jennifer caught Maya's eye and offered a slight smile of encouragement, while David shook his head in obvious disapproval of Sister Margaret's behavior. "Don't quote Buddhist teachings at me," Sister Margaret replied angrily. "I'm trying to maintain the integrity of this temple's spiritual environment, and you're undermining my authority by defending someone who clearly doesn't belong here." Maya felt a surge of protective anger toward Brother Thomas, who was being attacked for showing basic human decency and compassion. She realized that Sister Margaret's behavior wasn't really about temple standards or spiritual practice. It was about power and control, with Buddhist concepts being weaponized to justify arbitrary cruelty. "Sister Margaret," Maya said, her voice steady and clear, "Brother Thomas isn't undermining anything. He's demonstrating exactly the kind of compassionate wisdom that drew me to Buddhist practice in the first place. If this temple's integrity depends on humiliating sincere students and attacking kind teachers, then maybe the problem isn't with the students." The words left Maya's mouth before she could consider their full implications, but she felt no regret as they hung in the air. Around the meditation hall, she noticed other participants sitting straighter, their faces showing various degrees of approval and support for her statement. Sister Margaret's reaction was immediate and explosive. "That's it. You're done. Pack your things and leave this temple immediately. I won't tolerate this level of disrespect from someone whose poisoning the spiritual atmosphere for everyone else. Maya felt her heart sink despite her defiant words. Being expelled from the retreat meant losing the money she'd saved, the time she'd set aside, and the spiritual growth she'd hoped to achieve. But more than personal disappointment, she felt sadness for the other participants who were witnessing the destruction of what should have been a peaceful, supportive environment. "Wait," said a voice from across the meditation hall. Maya turned to see Margaret Chen, a quiet woman in her 50s who'd barely spoken since the retreat began. Margaret was rising from her cushion with deliberate care, her face showing determined resolve. "Sister Margaret," Margaret Chen said, using the administrator's title despite sharing the same first name. "I need to say something about what I've witnessed over the past 2 days. This young woman has been nothing but respectful and engaged since arriving here. Her questions during Dharma talks have been thoughtful. Her participation in activities has been wholehearted, and her behavior during meals and meditation has been exemplary." Maya felt tears welling in her eyes at this unexpected support from someone she'd barely interacted with during the retreat. Margaret Chen's quiet dignity and obvious sincerity gave her words special weight in the tense atmosphere. "Furthermore," Margaret Chen continued, "your behavior toward her has been inappropriate from the beginning. I've attended 7 retreats at this temple over the past 4 years, and I've never seen an administrator treat a participant with such hostility and disrespect. Your actions are creating exactly the kind of negative environment that contradicts everything Buddhist practice represents." Sister Margaret's face showed shock at this rebellion from someone she'd apparently considered a reliable ally. "Margaret, you don't understand the full situation. This woman has been—" "I understand perfectly," Margaret Chen interrupted firmly. "I've been watching carefully, hoping the situation would resolve itself, but your behavior has only escalated. If anyone should leave this retreat, it's not Maya." Margaret Chen's words seemed to break a dam of suppressed feelings among the other retreat participants. David, the retired teacher, stood up slowly from his meditation cushion, his weathered hands steady despite the obvious tension in the room. "I have to agree with Margaret," David said, his educator's voice carrying natural authority. "In 30 years of attending spiritual retreats and workshops, I've never witnessed anything like what's happening here. Maya's conduct has been exemplary, while Sister Margaret's behavior has been consistently inappropriate and contrary to basic Buddhist principles." Jennifer, the nurse from Seattle, also rose from her cushion. "As someone who works in healthcare, I recognize bullying behavior when I see it. What's happening here isn't about temple standards or spiritual discipline. It's about one person abusing their authority to target someone arbitrarily. It's completely unacceptable." Maya watched in amazement as one by one, Other participants began standing and voicing their support. Tom, a software engineer from Eugene, spoke about the positive energy Maya brought to group activities. Sarah, a social worker from Portland, mentioned Maya's helpful assistance with meditation posture during informal conversations. Even quiet participants who'd barely spoken during the retreat offered words of support and criticism of Sister Margaret's behavior. Brother Thomas observed the spontaneous uprising with an expression of deep sadness mixed with what might have been relief. Maya realized he'd probably been struggling with Sister Margaret's behavior for much longer than just this retreat, constrained by monastic protocols and his own compassionate nature from confronting the situation directly. "This is ridiculous," Sister Margaret declared, her voice rising to match her obvious panic at losing control of the situation. "You're all being manipulated by someone who's clearly skilled at playing victim and turning people against legitimate authority. This is exactly the kind of divisive behavior I've been trying to address." Maya felt overwhelmed by the support she was receiving from people who'd been strangers just 2 days earlier. Their willingness to speak up despite the potential consequences showed a level of moral courage that restored her faith in human decency after hours of feeling isolated and attacked. "Sister Margaret," Brother Thomas said, his voice carrying new firmness, "I think we need to recognize that your approach to this situation has created more problems than it's solved. Multiple witnesses are describing behavior that contradicts our temple's commitment to creating a supportive environment for spiritual practice." "You're all ganging up on me," Sister Margaret replied, her voice taking on a victim's tone that contrasted sharply with her earlier aggression. "I'm trying to maintain standards, and you're undermining my authority by supporting someone who doesn't respect Buddhist tradition." Margaret Chen stepped forward, her quiet dignity commanding attention. "Sister Margaret, what Buddhist tradition requires humiliating sincere students in public? What teaching suggests that interrupting meditation sessions to make accusations is appropriate? What principle supports attacking a monk for showing compassion?" Maya watched Sister Margaret's face cycle through various emotions: anger, confusion, defensiveness, and what might have been the first glimmer of self-awareness she'd shown since the confrontation began. The administrator seemed to be realizing that her behavior looked very different from the outside than it had felt from her perspective. I, I was trying to protect the integrity of our spiritual community," Sister Margaret said, her voice losing some of its earlier conviction. "Sometimes that requires making difficult decisions about who belongs here." Brother Thomas moved closer to Sister Margaret, his expression showing compassion despite the obvious strain she'd put him through. "Sister Margaret, protecting our community means creating an environment where sincere seekers feel welcome and supported. When multiple participants express concern about administrative behavior, we need to listen with open hearts rather than defensive reactions. Maya realized she was witnessing a crucial moment in the confrontation. Sister Margaret seemed to be wavering between doubling down on her aggressive stance and recognizing that her behavior had been inappropriate. The outcome would likely determine not just Maya's fate at the retreat, but the future dynamics of the entire temple community. Maybe, Sister Margaret said hesitantly, I've been overly concerned about maintaining standards, but this woman's behavior still seems. She trailed off, apparently unable to articulate specific concerns now that she was facing a room full of people who'd witnessed Maya's actual conduct, rather than accepting Sister Margaret's characterizations of it. The meditation hall remained silent as Sister Margaret struggled to complete her sentence, her earlier confidence evaporating under the collective gaze of participants who'd witnessed the gap between her accusations and Maya's actual behavior. Maya held her breath, sensing that the next few moments would determine whether the confrontation would escalate further or finally begin to resolve. Brother Thomas stepped closer to Sister Margaret, his movement careful and non-threatening. Maya could see him drawing on years of monastic training in conflict resolution, seeking to create space for Sister Margaret to save face while acknowledging the harm she'd caused. Sister Margaret, Brother Thomas said gently, we all struggle with our own triggers and reactions sometimes. The spiritual path includes recognizing when our good intentions might be expressed in ways that create suffering rather than healing. Perhaps this situation offers an opportunity for all of us to practice the compassion and understanding we're here to cultivate. Brother Thomas's skillful approach, which offered Sister Margaret a way to step back from her aggressive position without completely losing face. His ability to frame the situation as a learning opportunity rather than a personal failure showed the kind of wisdom that made him an effective teacher. Sister Margaret's shoulders sagged slightly, some of the rigid tension leaving her posture. I suppose I may have been too harsh. This retreat is important to me, and I worry about people not taking it seriously enough. But perhaps. She looked around the room at the faces of participants who'd supported Maya, seeming to see them clearly for the first time. Maya noticed Sister Margaret's expression shifting from defensive anger to something that might have been embarrassment or even shame. I owe you an apology, Sister Margaret said quietly, her words directed toward Maya but spoken loudly enough for everyone to hear. I allowed my concerns about temple standards to overshadow basic human kindness. Your behavior hasn't warranted the treatment you've received. Maya felt a complex mix of emotions at the unexpected apology. Relief that the confrontation was ending, gratitude for the support she'd received, and surprising compassion for Sister Margaret, who clearly struggled with her own insecurities and fears about protecting something she valued deeply. "Thank you," Maya replied simply, her voice carrying genuine appreciation for Sister Margaret's willingness to acknowledge her mistakes. "I understand wanting to protect something important to you. I hope we can move forward in a way that honors both your concerns and everyone's opportunity to practice here." Margaret Chen nodded approvingly at Maya's gracious response. "This is what Buddhist practice looks like, finding ways to transform conflict into understanding and growth for everyone involved." Brother Thomas smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression Maya had seen from him since the confrontation began. "Perhaps we can use this experience as a teaching moment about the difference between skillful and unskillful means of addressing concerns. Even when our intentions are positive, we need to examine whether our methods create harmony or discord." David, still standing beside his meditation cushion, raised a gentle question. "Sister Margaret, would you be willing to share what specific concerns you had about Maya's behavior? Now that we're in a calmer space, maybe we can understand what triggered such strong reactions." Sister Margaret hesitated, then spoke with more vulnerability than she'd shown previously. "I've seen many people attend retreats casually, treating them like spiritual vacations without genuine commitment. Maya is young and seemed so comfortable here that I assumed she was one of those people. I realize now that my assumptions were unfair, and that I was reacting to past experiences rather than observing present reality." Maya felt a wave of understanding wash over her. Sister Margaret's hostility had been rooted in protective instincts rather than personal malice, though that didn't excuse the inappropriate expression of those concerns. The administrator's fear of spiritual superficiality had led her to attack someone who was actually demonstrating genuine engagement. "I appreciate you sharing that," Maya said. "I understand wanting to protect the authenticity of spiritual practice. Maybe in the future, if you have concerns about a participant, we could find ways to address them privately before they become public conflicts." Jennifer, who had remained standing throughout the exchange, offered a practical suggestion. "Perhaps the temple could develop clearer guidelines about expectations for retreat participants and procedures for addressing concerns when they arise. That might help prevent misunderstandings like this in the future." Brother Thomas nodded enthusiastically. "That's an excellent idea. Creating clear, compassionate protocols for addressing issues would serve everyone better than relying on individual judgment calls in charged moments." Maya looked around the meditation hall, taking in the faces of people who'd been strangers days earlier, but had become allies in defending principles of fairness and compassion. The unexpected crisis had revealed character and created bonds that might never have formed under normal retreat circumstances. "Can we continue the retreat?" Maya asked, directing her question to both Brother Thomas and Sister Margaret. "I'd like to complete the experience I came here for, and I think we've all learned valuable lessons about community and conflict resolution." Sister Margaret nodded slowly, though Maya could see the effort it took for her to fully commit to the gesture. "Yes, of course you should complete the retreat. I I hope you can find value in the remaining time here, despite the difficulties I've caused." Brother Thomas clapped his hands together softly, the sound carrying a sense of resolution and new beginning. "Then let's use this experience as a foundation for deeper practice. We've witnessed how quickly misunderstanding can create suffering, and also how courage and compassion can transform conflict into wisdom." The participants began settling back onto their meditation cushions, though the energy in the room felt completely different from the peaceful silence that had existed before the confrontation. Maya noticed people glancing at each other with new recognition and respect, as if they'd been through something significant together. "Before we return to formal meditation," Brother Thomas continued, "let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned about ourselves and each other through this challenging experience. Sometimes our greatest teachings come not from books or lectures, but from navigating difficult situations with as much wisdom and compassion as we can manage." Maya settled onto her cushion, feeling emotionally drained but also strangely energized. The confrontation had been traumatic, but the support she'd received from fellow participants had restored her faith in human goodness. More importantly, witnessing Sister Margaret's capacity for self-reflection and apology had demonstrated the possibility of growth and change, even in difficult circumstances. As the meditation session resumed, Maya found her practice deeper and more focused than it had been since arriving at the temple. The morning's trauma had stripped away surface concerns and pretenses, leaving her more present and aware than she'd been in months. She began to understand how challenges could become doorways to greater understanding when approached with proper attitude. Sister Margaret had positioned herself at the back of the meditation hall, her posture reflecting both humility and genuine engagement with the practice. Maya occasionally sensed her presence, but no longer felt the weight of hostile observation. Instead, there seemed to be a quality of respectful attention that acknowledged Maya's right to be there. Brother Thomas's guidance during the session focused on working with difficult emotions and transforming conflict into wisdom. His teachings felt directly relevant to the morning's events, offering practical tools for processing trauma and finding meaning in challenging experiences. When we encounter strong reactions in ourselves or others, Brother Thomas said during the session, we can ask ourselves, what is this teaching me? What opportunity for growth is hidden within this difficulty? How can I respond in ways that honor both my own needs and the needs of others? Maya found herself applying these questions to her experience with Sister Margaret. The administrator's behavior had been inappropriate, but it had also revealed Maya's own capacity for standing up to injustice and speaking truth in difficult circumstances. The support from other participants had shown her that genuine community could emerge even among strangers when people chose courage over comfort. As the meditation session concluded, participants began rising from their cushions with the slow, mindful movements that characterized their practice. Maya noticed that people were making eye contact and sharing subtle smiles, as if they'd shared something meaningful that created new bonds between them. Sister Margaret approached Maya hesitantly as people began filing out of the meditation hall. "Maya, I wonder if I could speak with you privately for a few minutes. I'd like to offer a more complete apology and perhaps understand better what brought you here." Maya felt a moment of wariness. The confrontation was still fresh, and she wasn't entirely sure she trusted Sister Margaret's change of heart. But something in the administrator's tone suggested genuine remorse rather than strategic manipulation. "Of course," Maya replied. "I'd be open to that conversation." Brother Thomas overheard the exchange and offered a gentle suggestion. "Perhaps you could meet in the garden area behind the temple. It's peaceful there, and the natural setting might help facilitate honest communication." Maya appreciated his implicit offer to be nearby if needed, though she sensed that Sister Margaret's aggressive energy had genuinely shifted. The administrator seemed subdued and reflective rather than hostile, as if the confrontation had forced her to confront aspects of herself she'd been avoiding. The garden behind the temple felt like a sanctuary within a sanctuary, its carefully tended paths winding between flowering shrubs and meditation stones. Maya and Sister Margaret settled onto a wooden bench beside a small waterfall, the sound of flowing water creating a peaceful backdrop for their conversation. Sister Margaret sat quietly for several minutes, her hands folded in her lap and her gaze fixed on the garden's carefully raked gravel patterns. Maya waited patiently, sensing that the administrator was gathering courage to speak more honestly than she had during the public confrontation. "I need to tell you something," Sister Margaret finally said, her voice carrying a vulnerability that contrasted sharply with the harsh authority she displayed earlier. "My behavior toward you wasn't really about temple standards or spiritual discipline. It was about my own fears and insecurities, and I projected them onto you unfairly." Maya felt surprised by Sister Margaret's willingness to acknowledge the deeper motivations behind her actions. "What kind of fears?" Sister Margaret took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling with the weight of her confession. I've been the administrator here for 8 years, and I've watched this temple struggle to maintain its identity as a serious spiritual center. We've had people attend retreats who were more interested in social media content than genuine practice. Couples who treated meditation sessions like date activities, and individuals who disrupted the peaceful atmosphere with inappropriate behavior. Maya listened without judgment, beginning to understand the context that had shaped Sister Margaret's hypersensitive reactions to perceived threats to the temple's spiritual integrity. When you arrived, Sister Margaret continued, you seemed so comfortable and confident that I assumed you were another casual participant who didn't understand the depth of what we offer here. Your questions during Dharma talks, your natural ease with the practices, even your youth, all of it triggered my protective instincts in ways that weren't fair to you. Maya felt a mix of compassion and frustration at Sister Margaret's explanation. While she could understand the administrator's protective feelings about the temple, the projection of assumptions onto innocent participants seemed like a problematic pattern that needed addressing. I appreciate you sharing that, Maya said carefully. But I'm wondering how I could have shown you that my intentions were genuine without having to prove myself through some kind of trial by fire. What would appropriate behavior have looked like from your perspective? Sister Margaret winced at the question, apparently recognizing the impossible position she'd created. That's the problem. I didn't give you any fair opportunity to demonstrate your sincerity. I decided you were insincere based on superficial impressions, and then interpreted everything you did through that lens. It was completely unfair. Maya felt validated by Sister Margaret's acknowledgement of the circular logic that had made defending herself impossible. It was very confusing and hurtful to be attacked for things I wasn't doing and criticized for responses that seemed perfectly reasonable to me. I know, Sister Margaret said, her voice thick with what sounded like genuine remorse. I created exactly the kind of unwelcoming environment that drives sincere seekers away from spiritual practice. I became the thing I was trying to protect the temple from. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching koi fish swim lazily in the pond beside their bench. Maya found herself processing complex emotions: anger at the treatment she'd received, appreciation for Sister Margaret's willingness to take responsibility, and uncertainty about how to move forward. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said eventually. "Have you done this to other participants before? Created conflicts based on assumptions about their motivations?" Sister Margaret's pause before answering suggested the question hit close to home. "Not to this extent, but yes, I've probably been more suspicious and unwelcoming than necessary with other participants. I've justified it as maintaining standards, but I'm beginning to realize that I may have driven away people who could have benefited from being here." Maya felt sad for both Sister Margaret and the unknown participants who might have been discouraged from pursuing spiritual practice by similar experiences. What do you think would help you distinguish between genuine concerns and protective overreactions in the future? Sister Margaret looked at Maya with something approaching gratitude. I think I need to separate my role as administrator from my personal anxieties about the temple's reputation. And I need to develop better ways of addressing concerns that don't involve public confrontation or character attacks. Maya nodded, appreciating Sister Margaret's apparent willingness to examine her own behavior rather than simply apologizing and moving on. Brother Thomas mentioned developing clearer protocols for addressing issues. That might help create structure that prevents situations like this from escalating. Yes, Sister Margaret agreed. And I think I need to practice the Buddhist principles I claim to be protecting, approaching people with curiosity rather than judgment, assuming positive intentions until proven otherwise, and addressing concerns with compassion rather than hostility. As Maya and Sister Margaret continued their conversation in the peaceful garden, the sound of the temple bell announced the approach of dinner time. Maya realized they'd been talking for nearly an hour, working through layers of misunderstanding and hurt that had built up over just 2 days but felt much deeper and more complex. I want to ask you something, Sister Margaret said as they prepared to return to the main temple building. Would you be willing to help me understand what drew you to Buddhist practice? I realize I never gave you a chance to share your story, and I'd like to learn about your genuine motivations. Maya felt touched by the request, recognizing it as Sister Margaret's attempt to see her as a whole person rather than a perceived threat to temple integrity. I'd be happy to share that. I think understanding each other's stories might help prevent future misunderstandings. They walked slowly along the garden path, Maya gathering her thoughts about how to explain her spiritual journey in a way that would help Sister Margaret understand her sincere commitment to Buddhist practice. I started meditating 3 years ago during a particularly difficult period in my life, Maya began. I was struggling with anxiety and depression, feeling disconnected from meaning and purpose. A friend suggested I try mindfulness meditation, and I was skeptical at first, but desperate enough to give it a try. Sister Margaret listened attentively, her earlier defensive posture replaced by genuine curiosity about Maya's experience. The first few months were challenging, Maya continued. I used apps and YouTube videos, practicing alone in my apartment and often feeling like I was doing everything wrong. But gradually, I began noticing changes, less reactivity to stress, more awareness of my thoughts and emotions, a growing sense of peace even in difficult circumstances. Maya paused at a particularly beautiful section of the garden, where late afternoon sunlight filtered through maple trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the stone pathway. As my practice deepened, I became curious about the Buddhist teachings that underpin mindfulness meditation. I started reading books, attending Dharma talks at local centers, and gradually understanding that meditation wasn't just a stress reduction technique, but part of a comprehensive path toward wisdom and compassion. Sister Margaret nodded, her expression showing growing understanding of Maya's serious engagement with Buddhist principles. That sounds like a very natural and thoughtful progression into the practice. When I heard about this retreat, Maya continued, I felt ready to deepen my practice in a more intensive setting. I saved money for months and rearranged my work schedule because I wanted to experience Buddhist practice in a traditional setting with experienced teachers. Coming here felt like an important step in my spiritual development. Maya could see Sister Margaret processing this information, comparing it to her initial assumptions about Maya's casual approach to the retreat. The contrast between Maya's actual motivations and Sister Margaret's projections seemed to be creating genuine remorse in the administrator. "I'm so sorry," Sister Margaret said quietly. "Your commitment and sincerity are obvious now that I'm actually listening to you. I can't believe I created such a hostile environment for someone who was seeking exactly what this temple is meant to provide." Maya felt a wave of compassion for Sister Margaret, recognizing how much courage it took to acknowledge such a significant mistake. "I appreciate your apology. I think we both learned something important about the danger of assumptions and the importance of really seeing people as they are rather than as we expect them to be." As they approached the dining hall, Maya could see other retreat participants gathering for dinner. Several people looked in their direction with expressions of concern and curiosity, clearly wondering about the outcome of Maya and Sister Margaret's private conversation. Brother Thomas emerged from the dining hall and approached them with a gentle smile. "How are you both doing? I've been holding you in my thoughts during your conversation." Sister Margaret looked at Brother Thomas with new appreciation. "Thank you for your patience with me today, Brother Thomas. I realize I put you in an impossible position, and I'm grateful for your skillful handling of a situation I created through my own poor judgment." Brother Thomas nodded graciously. "We all have moments when our protective instincts express themselves in ways that create more problems than they solve. What matters is our willingness to learn from these experiences and grow in wisdom and compassion." Maya felt grateful for Brother Thomas's consistent demonstration of Buddhist principles throughout the crisis. His ability to remain centered and compassionate while addressing inappropriate behavior had provided a model for how to handle conflict skillfully. "I'd like to address the other participants," Sister Margaret said, her voice carrying nervous determination. I need to acknowledge my mistakes publicly and apologize for disrupting their retreat experience. Maya admired Sister Margaret's willingness to take full responsibility for her actions in front of the group that had witnessed the confrontation. I think that would be meaningful for everyone. The dining hall buzzed with quiet conversation as retreat participants gathered for dinner, their voices carrying an undertone of concern about the day's dramatic events. Maya noticed people glancing toward her and Sister Margaret as they entered together, clearly curious about the outcome of their private discussion. Brother Thomas called for attention by gently ringing a small bell, the sound creating immediate silence in the room. Before we begin our meal, Sister Margaret would like to address the community about today's events. Sister Margaret stood slowly, her posture reflecting both humility and determination. Maya could see the effort it took for her to face the group of people who had witnessed her inappropriate behavior and called her out for it. "I owe all of you an apology," Sister Margaret began, her voice steady despite obvious nervousness. "My behavior toward Maya today was completely inappropriate and contrary to everything this temple represents. I allowed my own fears and assumptions to override basic compassion and respect." The dining hall remained silent, participants listening with attention that felt both supportive and expectant. Maya noticed several people nodding slightly, appreciating Sister Margaret's willingness to take responsibility publicly. "I projected my concerns about protecting this temple's spiritual integrity onto Maya unfairly," Sister Margaret continued. "I made assumptions about her motivations and character based on superficial impressions, then interpreted everything she did through that biased lens. This created exactly the kind of unwelcoming environment that drives sincere seekers away from Buddhist practice." Margaret Chen, who had been the first to speak up in Maya's defense, offered a gentle nod of acknowledgement. "Thank you for recognizing that, Sister Margaret. It takes courage to admit mistakes publicly." Sister Margaret's expression showed gratitude for Margaret Chen's supportive response. "I also want to acknowledge those of you who spoke up on Maya's behalf. Your willingness to defend someone who was being treated unfairly demonstrated exactly the kind of compassion and courage that makes spiritual community meaningful." Maya felt moved by Sister Margaret's comprehensive acknowledgement of the situation. The administrator wasn't just apologizing for her own behavior, but recognizing the positive actions of others who had chosen to intervene when they witnessed injustice. "Moving forward," Sister Margaret said, "I'm committed to developing better ways of addressing concerns that don't involve public confrontation or character attacks. Brother Thomas and I will be working together to create clearer protocols for handling issues that arise during retreats." Brother Thomas stepped forward slightly. Sister Margaret and I have discussed developing guidelines that balance maintaining supportive spiritual environment with addressing legitimate concerns through compassionate communication. We want to ensure that all participants feel welcome and respected while preserving the temple's commitment to serious practice. David, the retired teacher, raised his hand politely. I think what happened today, while difficult, actually demonstrates something important about spiritual community. When people are willing to speak up for each other and address problems directly, it creates stronger bonds and more authentic relationships. Jennifer nodded in agreement. As someone who works in healthcare, I see how important it is to address problematic behavior early before it escalates. The fact that we could work through this conflict and find resolution gives me hope for how communities can handle difficult situations. Maya felt overwhelmed by the supportive atmosphere that had emerged from the morning's crisis. What had begun as a traumatic confrontation had transformed into a teaching moment about conflict resolution, community support, and personal growth. I want to thank everyone, Maya said, standing to address the group. This morning I felt isolated and confused, unsure whether I belonged here or had somehow failed to meet expectations I didn't understand. Your willingness to speak up and defend me showed me what spiritual community can look like when people choose courage over comfort. She turned toward Sister Margaret. And I want to thank you for your willingness to examine your own behavior and make changes. That kind of self-reflection and growth is what Buddhist practice is really about. Sister Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for your grace in accepting my apology and for helping me understand how my protective instincts had become destructive. I hope the rest of your retreat provides the spiritual growth you came here seeking. Brother Thomas smiled warmly at both women. This exchange demonstrates something beautiful about the Buddhist path, our capacity to transform conflict into wisdom and suffering into compassion. Let's carry this spirit of understanding into our remaining time together. As participants began serving themselves from the simple dinner of vegetable stew and fresh bread, Maya noticed the energy in the room had shifted dramatically from the tension of earlier hours. People were making eye contact, sharing quiet smiles, and engaging in gentle conversation that felt deeper and more meaningful than typical retreat interactions. The evening meditation session took place in a completely transformed atmosphere. Where morning had brought tension and conflict, evening brought a sense of community and shared purpose that Maya had never experienced in a spiritual setting. The same meditation hall that had witnessed harsh confrontation now held 20 people united by their journey through difficulty toward understanding. Brother Thomas began the session with a teaching about the lotus flower, which grows from muddy pond bottoms to bloom in pristine beauty above the water's surface. Our spiritual practice works similarly, he explained. We don't avoid difficulties or pretend they don't exist. Instead, we learn to find wisdom and compassion within challenging circumstances, transforming what could be poison into medicine. Maya found his metaphor deeply meaningful as she reflected on the day's events. The morning's trauma had felt like drowning in muddy water, but the afternoon's resolution had revealed possibilities for growth and connection she couldn't have imagined when Sister Margaret first attacked her character. As the formal meditation began, Maya noticed how different her internal experience felt compared to the morning session. Where she'd previously struggled with anger and confusion, she now felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. The support from fellow participants had healed something in her that went beyond the immediate conflict with Sister Margaret. She also became aware of Sister Margaret's presence in the meditation hall in a completely different way. Instead of feeling watched and judged, Maya sensed the administrator's genuine engagement with the practice and her obvious commitment to personal growth. The transformation felt almost miraculous. Two people who'd been in active conflict a few hours earlier now sharing peaceful silence in the same sacred space. During the meditation, Maya found herself spontaneously practicing loving-kindness meditation, sending thoughts of peace and well-being to everyone in the room. When her attention turned to Sister Margaret, she discovered that her anger had transformed into compassion for someone who struggled with her own fears and insecurities. The session concluded with Brother Thomas inviting participants to share brief reflections on their experience, if they felt moved to do so. The invitation was optional, but several people chose to speak. Today taught me that spiritual community isn't about avoiding conflict, said Margaret Chen, but about handling conflict with wisdom and compassion when it arises. I'm grateful we could work through our difficulties rather than letting them fester. Tom, the software engineer, offered his perspective. I've been coming to meditation retreats for years, but I've never experienced anything like what happened today. The way people supported each other and insisted on fairness showed me what genuine Dharma community looks like. Sarah, the social worker, connected the day's events to her professional experience. In my work, I see how important it is to address power imbalances and inappropriate behavior directly. The fact that we could do that here while maintaining compassion for everyone involved gives me hope for how we can handle difficult situations in all areas of life. When Sister Margaret stood to speak, the room grew especially quiet. Maya could see the effort it took for her to share her thoughts publicly after the day's revelations about her behavior. Today I learned that my attempts to protect something I love had actually become destructive to it, Sister Margaret said, her voice carrying hard-won wisdom. I also learned that genuine spiritual community emerges not from avoiding problems, but from facing them with honesty and courage. I'm grateful to everyone who had the compassion to hold me accountable while still treating me with basic human dignity. Maya felt moved by Sister Margaret's continued willingness to examine her actions and take responsibility for their consequences. The administrator's growth throughout the day had been remarkable to witness. When Brother Thomas invited Maya to share her thoughts, she felt nervous but also clear about what she wanted to say. "This morning I felt like I was drowning," Maya began. "I couldn't understand why I was being attacked, and I felt completely alone in a place where I'd hoped to find peace. But the way people supported each other and insisted on treating everyone fairly showed me what Buddhist practice really means, not just sitting quietly on cushions, but actively creating conditions where wisdom and compassion can flourish." She paused, gathering courage for what she wanted to say next. "I also learned something about my own capacity to stand up for what's right, even when it's scary and difficult. Before today, I might have just accepted unfair treatment to avoid conflict. But seeing how much better things got when people were willing to speak truth with kindness makes me want to be more courageous in all areas of my life." The meditation hall filled with appreciative silence as Maya concluded her reflection. She could feel the support and understanding of the community surrounding her like a warm embrace. The final 2 days of the retreat unfolded with a richness and depth that Maya could never have anticipated. The crisis and resolution had created bonds between participants that transformed their remaining time together from a collection of individual spiritual journeys into a genuine community experience. Maya noticed changes in herself that went beyond her meditation practice. The experience of standing up to Sister Margaret's inappropriate behavior had awakened something in her, a confidence in her own judgment, and a willingness to advocate for herself and others that felt like a fundamental shift in her character. During walking meditation, she found herself naturally falling into step with different participants, sharing silent companionship that felt deeper than most conversations. The shared experience of witnessing and addressing injustice had created a foundation of trust and mutual respect that enhanced everyone's practice. Sister Margaret's transformation was equally remarkable to observe. The administrator approached her duties with the same attention to detail as before, but her interactions with participants now carried warmth and genuine interest in their well-being. She made a point of having individual conversations with each person, asking about their practice, and offering support where appropriate. When Sister Margaret spoke with Maya, their conversation revealed how much the administrator had learned from the crisis. "I've been thinking about our confrontation," Sister Margaret said during a break between sessions. "I realize now that I was so focused on protecting the temple's reputation that I forgot about its actual purpose, providing a supportive environment for spiritual growth. Your presence here has been a gift, even though I was too blinded by my own fears to see it initially. Maya appreciated Sister Margaret's continued reflection on the experience. I think we both learned important lessons about assumptions and the importance of really seeing people as they are. Yes, Sister Margaret agreed. And I've been thinking about how to restructure some of our retreat protocols to prevent similar situations in the future. I want to create clearer guidelines for addressing concerns that don't involve public confrontation or character attacks. Maya felt encouraged by Sister Margaret's commitment to institutional change rather than just personal growth. That sounds like it could help future participants feel more secure and welcomed. Brother Thomas continued to demonstrate the skillful teaching that had initially drawn Maya to deepen her practice. His Dharma talks during the remaining days focused on themes of community, conflict resolution, and the transformation of suffering into wisdom. Maya suspected he was drawing on the retreat's experiences to offer teachings that would help everyone integrate what they'd learned. True spiritual maturity, Brother Thomas explained during one session, isn't about avoiding difficulties or always maintaining perfect equanimity. It's about learning to work with whatever arises in ways that increase wisdom and compassion for ourselves and others. Maya found his teachings particularly relevant as she processed her own reactions to the crisis. She discovered capabilities within herself, the ability to stand up to authority, to maintain composure under attack, to advocate for fairness even when it was uncomfortable, that she hadn't known she possessed. On the fourth evening, participants gathered for an informal sharing circle where they could reflect on their retreat experience and express gratitude for insights they'd gained. The atmosphere felt warm and intimate, very different from the formal meditation sessions. Margaret Chen spoke about how witnessing the community's response to conflict had renewed her faith in human goodness. I've been practicing Buddhism for years, but I'd never seen such a clear demonstration of how Dharma principles can transform difficult situations. David shared his appreciation for the retreat's unexpected lessons. I came here seeking personal peace and quiet, but I'm leaving with a deeper understanding of how individual practice connects to community responsibility. Jennifer talked about taking the experience back to her work in healthcare. The way we handled conflict here, with direct communication, mutual support, and commitment to growth, offers a model for addressing problems in other settings. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she felt overwhelmed by the richness of her experience over the past few days. I came here hoping to deepen my meditation practice, she said, and I definitely accomplished that goal. But I'm leaving with so much more, a better understanding of my own strength, a deeper appreciation for genuine community, and confidence that even difficult situations can become opportunities for growth when people approach them with courage and compassion. She looked around the circle at faces that had become familiar and dear over just a few days. I'm especially grateful to everyone who spoke up when I was being treated unfairly. Your willingness to advocate for justice showed me what spiritual community really means. Sister Margaret was the last person to share, and Maya could see the emotion in her expression as she prepared to speak. This retreat has been the most challenging and transformative experience I've had in years, Sister Margaret began. I learned that my protective instincts had become destructive, and that true protection of something sacred involves creating conditions where it can flourish rather than trying to control who has access to it. The final morning of the retreat arrived with a bittersweet quality that Maya had never experienced before. She woke naturally before the dawn bell, her body having adjusted to the temple's rhythm, and lay quietly in her narrow cot reflecting on how much had changed since her arrival 5 days earlier. The woman who had driven up the mountain seeking deeper meditation practice was returning to Portland with profound lessons about community, courage, and the transformation of conflict into wisdom. The crisis with Sister Margaret had initially felt like a disaster that might end her retreat prematurely, but it had ultimately become the source of the most meaningful growth she'd experienced in years. Maya dressed quietly in the dormitory, careful not to wake other participants who were still sleeping. She wanted to spend some time alone in the garden, where she and Sister Margaret had their breakthrough conversation, processing her thoughts before the day's activities began. The garden looked ethereal in the pre-dawn darkness, with moonlight filtering through maple branches and creating patterns of light and shadow on the stone pathways. Maya settled onto the bench beside the small pond, listening to the gentle sound of water flowing over rocks while koi fish moved lazily in the depths below. She thought about the moment when Sister Margaret had first attacked her character during walking meditation. The memory still carried some emotional charge, but now it felt like a doorway to understanding rather than a source of pure trauma. The injustice had awakened something in her that might have remained dormant if she'd never faced such a direct challenge to her sense of self. "You're up early," a gentle voice said behind her. Maya turned to see Brother Thomas approaching with his characteristic quiet dignity, carrying a steaming cup of tea in each hand. "I wanted some time to reflect before the day gets busy," Maya replied, accepting the tea gratefully. "This place has become very meaningful to me, and I'm sad to leave it." Brother Thomas settled beside her on the bench, his presence radiating the same peaceful energy that had made him such an effective teacher throughout the retreat. "You know, the most powerful spiritual experiences often come from the most unexpected directions. I don't think anyone could have predicted how your retreat would unfold." Maya smiled at the understatement. "When I signed up for this, I was expecting quiet meditation and Dharma talks, not public confrontations and community organizing. Yet look at what emerged from that difficult situation," Brother Thomas observed. "You discovered your own capacity for courageous speech. The other participants learned about the importance of supporting each other, and Sister Margaret gained insights that will change how she approaches her role here. The Dharma worked through circumstances that initially seemed completely contrary to spiritual practice." Maya sipped her tea, appreciating Brother Thomas's ability to find meaning and teaching in even the most challenging experiences. "I keep thinking about how isolated I felt when Sister Margaret first started attacking me. I couldn't understand why it was happening, and I felt completely alone." "That's often how these situations begin," Brother Thomas replied. "Someone in authority abuses their position, and the target feels confused and isolated. What made the difference here was that other people were willing to speak up when they witnessed injustice." Maya nodded, remembering the moment when Margaret Chen had first stood up to defend her. "I was so grateful when people started supporting me. It felt like being rescued from drowning." "Community support is essential," Brother Thomas agreed. "But I also want to acknowledge your own role in creating that outcome. You could have accepted Sister Margaret's treatment silently, or you could have responded with equal hostility. Instead, you maintained your dignity while clearly stating your truth. That gave others permission to support you." Maya felt touched by Brother Thomas's recognition of her contribution to the positive resolution. "I was so scared of making things worse, but I realized that staying silent wasn't serving anyone." "That's a profound lesson that extends far beyond this retreat," Brother Thomas said. "In your work, your relationships, your community involvement, there will be times when speaking up feels risky but necessary. Having experienced your own capacity for courageous speech in this setting, you'll be better prepared for those future moments." As they sat in comfortable silence, Maya began to hear stirring sounds from the temple building as other participants woke for the final day. The retreat that had begun with such promise descended into crisis, and found resolution through community support was drawing to a close. "What will you do differently because of this experience?" Brother Thomas asked. Maya considered the question carefully. "I think I'll be more willing to trust my own judgment when something feels wrong, and more willing to speak up when I witness injustice. I'll also look for opportunities to support others who might be facing unfair treatment." "Those are important commitments," Brother Thomas said. "And I suspect you'll find that your meditation practice has deepened in ways that will only become apparent over time. Crisis can be a profound teacher if we're willing to learn from it." The final morning meditation session carried a poignant quality as 20 people sat together in silence, knowing they would soon scatter back to their separate lives. Maya found her practice unusually focused and peaceful, as if the preceding days had cleared away mental and emotional obstacles that had been present when she arrived. She reflected on Brother Thomas's teaching about the lotus flower growing from muddy water. Her own experience seemed to perfectly illustrate his point. The most beautiful insights and connections had emerged from the most difficult circumstances. Without Sister Margaret's inappropriate behavior, Maya might never have discovered her own capacity for standing up to authority, and the retreat participants might never have experienced the profound bonding that came from supporting each other through crisis.